Guys, welcome to Tara Series 7 and reviewing this, which is the Spider-Man Marvel Legends Retro / Classic Wave Gwen Stacy. So really cool, really blessed. Picked this up today. This is the last figure in the wave that I need to pick up, and I found today. I actually found it at one of the Walmarts where I have picked up some of the other characters. So apparently they got 2 cases in, so that was pretty cool. And yeah, we got a nice cool review of her in box. I wasn't really sure if I was going to pick this one up. It was definitely one I thought was pretty cool, but you know, I kind of was more interested in one of the, more of the other characters, more of the superheroes and supervillains. But I do think this is a pretty neat action figure, and you have Gwen Stacy written there with a little billboard, and you have Spider-Man Retro, and she has a lot of accessories. And then on the back, it gives you a bio on Gwen and more of the other characters in Wave. And let's open this up. So here we have Gwen Stacy, and they've done a pretty good job with her. In the original comic book, she was Peter Parker's pretty much his first love interest. I think, I don't know, maybe Liz Allen and Betty Brant might come before her. I'm not 100% sure about that. But Gwen was pretty much his first real girlfriend in the comic books. And, you know, obviously she got way overshadowed by Mary Jane because she died pretty early on in the comic books too. But they decided to make her, and it's pretty cool. And I think the likeness to her is pretty good. You know, you have the paint there and the blonde hair, and then she has the black that goes to separate it, and it looks pretty good, like the way they mold the hair, and then the jacket's really cool. It's green. You know, her clothing here too is very significant because this is the clothing she actually wears in her last appearance, or should I say last main appearance, in which she dies, and she's killed by the Green Goblin, or kind of Spider-Man. It's a complicated story that involves a lot of detailing, but basically, you know, yeah, it's basically the Green Goblin and Spider-Man, her in her last story, and I like how they did that because the Green Goblin and both Spider-Man are in this wave, obviously being a Spider-Man wave, but I like how they actually made this from her last comic appearance too, and that was way back in the 60s, so they really went out for this one, and I like that. And she's got some really nice paint on the green. I believe it was the 60s. Might have been 70s, but I believe it was 60s. And it's this dark green with some creases and wrinkles, has some buttons. I believe this is a new sculpt. She also has this like brown belt that's painted and molded onto here, and I like how it's a separate piece too, as opposed to just being molded together. I like how it kind of hangs. I think they did a good job with that. The kind of like sweater thing she's wearing has some really nice textures and detailed lines in it, and then she has the purple skirt and then the boots. But yeah, I think they did a really good job. And again, I like how they actually made this from the issue that she dies, and I think that's pretty cool considering we get the Green Goblin and Spider-Man in this wave. And in terms of articulation, she's got a 360 of the head. She can look up and down, 360 of the arm, swing out the shoulder, bendability at the elbow, and a 360 at the elbow, 360 at the wrist, and they're on hinges, 360 at the torso kind of joint. The legs going forwards, backwards, and outwards. She's a little bit hindered by the skirt, but it's made of rubber, so it doesn't do it too much. You have double jointed knees and rotation, and then the feet also move up and down and rotate. So again, in terms of articulation, pretty good and pretty cool. And she actually has a lot of really cool accessories as well. And if I can pull this one out here, first is her bag. I wish this had like a strap to go over, but it probably didn't. And the comic books, considering that they were pretty accurate to this year, I don't really remember. But it's painted lightly blue, and it's got a really nice touch on it. It looks good, and it's also got some little kind of like, if you can get to focus really quickly, you can kind of see where it's pushed together like a real bag file type thing would be, so I like them. And you have those little 2 things there, and I believe she can hold it kind of almost like this. I don't know if that works better. It might not work that well. But yeah, that's kind of how they show her holding on the package, kind of like pushed into her elbow a little bit. And you also get this, which is one of my favorite accessories. You get the Midtown High School book. So this is from Midtown High School, which, if you don't know, is the high school that Peter Parker attends in the original comic books. In the MCU, I think they renamed it like the Midtown School of Science or whatever. It is still called Midtown, but I believe that it got a new name for the MCU. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I do really like that they included the Midtown tile there, and she can hold it in her other hand. But also, and then this, which might just be my favorite little kind of accessory that you get here, is this newspaper, this rolled up newspaper that has the Daily Bugle written on it. So I really like this. You know, these are accessories that you can really use more with Spider-Man than you could Gwen Stacy, but I like that they included them. And just to show you what I mean here really quickly. And lastly, what I was talking about here is like you can have Peter Parker holding his newspaper that he works at while also having his school book in his other hand. So, even though these are accessories that are made for Gwen Stacy, I feel like you can kind of use them with the Spider-Man and just some of the previous Peter Parkers we've seen. So I really like that. I like how they decided to do this wave because, we haven't really seen civilian type stuff like this before. And I think they look great together, having Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy together. I just think that's really cool. But you do get one more accessory, and the last accessory here is probably my favorite by far. But it's an alternative head to put on Gwen Stacy. And it's an alternative head of Mary Jane. So say you're a Mary Jane fan. Personally, I prefer Mary Jane over Gwen Stacy. You could just take this head off and turn it into a Mary Jane figure. And that's, I think, is really cool. And here's what that looks like. And I think they've done a really good job with the head, the paint. It looks a lot like Mary Jane. This is probably a pre-existing Mary Jane head released, but I think it looks really good. Obviously she probably will not be wearing the clothes that Gwen Stacy died in. But I feel like you could actually use this head sculpt on a lot of other female action figures they've already made. So, if you did want this head, but necessarily wanted to do like just Gwen Stacy all the time, I feel like you could do that. And I really like this accessory too, because, we've never really gotten a Gwen Stacy action figure like this before, and we've also never really gotten a Mary Jane like this. So I like the idea that they took the opportunity to give you two heads at the same time to make those. And again, too, personally, I prefer Mary Jane over Gwen Stacy, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that prefer Gwen Stacy over Mary Jane. So I like the idea that you get the option to have both characters without necessarily having to buy both characters. And I think that this was a really smart idea on their part. And lastly, but certainly not least, here we have a comparison. And lastly, here's a comparison between Green Goblin, Spider-Man, and Gwen. And as you can see, they're all in a good height range here. And I really like this too, that we're getting all three of these characters, in this kind of pickup wave. It really gives you the option to buy all three or just to buy them, like at different points in times if you don't want all three. And I like that, because obviously these are the three main characters of that particular moment in the comics. One of the most, I would say probably one of the most definitive moments in the comics, because very rarely, do you get a defendant end to a love interest that early. It's obviously, one of the most iconic Spider-Man stories of all time, so I like how they found a way to bring that into action figure form, and I also like how they found a way to give us a Mary Jane action figure in it too. I like that. I think this wave has been absolutely perfect. Really, there's no figure I have that many complaints about, and I think the accessories are great. I think the figure lineup is great. Usually if there's an entire wave, most times I only buy to complete the Build-A-Figure, but this is one of the few waves that doesn't have a Build-A-Figure that I just bought because I genuinely really like every character and action figure in this wave. I think they did a really good job with it. And yeah, thank you for watching. Please rate, like, and subscribe.